The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across a sleepy little town. Max, a German shepherd with fur as black and tan as a summer night, was in trouble. His deep barks had turned to soft whimpers, echoing through the quiet yard. His head was stuck tight in the rusty bars of an old metal gate. He'd been chasing a scrappy stray cat, his paws pounding the dirt wind-clang. The gate trapped him. Now, his big brown eyes darted in panic, his body trembling as he tried to pull free in the small house nearby. 6-year-old Baby sat on the porch, her pigtails bouncing as she hummed a tune. Max was her best friend, her protector, the one who slept by her bed every night. She'd named him Max because he was Maximum, the biggest, bravest dog she knew. But that evening, his whimpers cut through her song like a knife. She froze, her little heart pounding. "Max," she called, her voice small but sharp. She ran to the yard, her sneakers slapping the ground. There he was, his strong body hunched, his head wedged in the gate's cold bars. The sight hit her like a punch. Max wasn't just a dog, he was family. His fur was matted with sweat, and his whines were weak, like he was begging for help. Baby dropped to her knees, her tiny hands reaching for him. "Max, oh no, what happened?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Max's eyes locked onto hers, full of trust, but also pain. He tried to wag his tail, but it barely moved. The gate's sharp edges pressed into his neck, and every tug made him yelp. Baby's chest tightened. She couldn't lose him, not Max, not her hero. She stroked his fur, her fingers trembling. "I'm gonna get you out, I promise," she said, her voice fierce despite the tears welling up. She looked around, hoping someone would come running. But the street was quiet, the neighbors tucked inside their homes. The air felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. Baby's mind raced. She wasn't strong enough to pull the gate apart, and Max was too big for her to lift. She needed help, but who? Her mom, Sarah, was inside, probably busy with her baby brother, Timmy, who'd been sick all week. Baby felt a lump in her throat. She didn't want to bother her mom, but Max needed her. "Hold on, Max," she said, pressing her cheek against his warm fur. "I'll be right back." She scrambled to her feet and bolted toward the house, her heart thumping like a drum. The screen door slammed behind her as she burst into the kitchen. Sarah was at the counter stirring a pot of soup, her face tired. "Mom?" Baby cried, her voice cracking. "Max is stuck. His head's in the gate and he's hurt." Sarah turned her eyes wide. "What? How did that happen?" she asked, wiping her hands on a towel. She followed Baby outside, her steps quick but heavy with worry. When she saw Max, her face fell. "Oh, Max, you poor thing," she murmured. She knelt by the gate, inspecting the bars. "Baby, this is bad. The gate's rusted shut. We need help." Baby's fists clenched. "Then call someone. Call the firemen," she pleaded, her voice loud with desperation. Sarah hesitated, pulling out her phone. "I'll try, sweetheart, but they're busy tonight. There's a big fire downtown," she said softly. Baby's stomach twisted. Fire? What did that matter when Max was hurting? She looked at her dog, his eyes pleading, his whimpers softer now. He was getting tired, and that scared her more than anything. She sank back down beside him, her small hand resting on his side. His heart was still beating, strong but fast. "You're gonna be okay, Max," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "I won't let anything happen to you."
Ow.
The night was closing in, the air growing colder. Baby didn't know how long Max could hold on, but she knew one thing. She'd do whatever it took to save him. Even if the whole town was too busy, even if the gate wouldn't budge, she'd find a way. Max was her family, and family didn't give up. As the stars began to peek out, Baby sat by Max, her tiny body curled against his. She didn't notice the neighbors starting to gather, their whispers floating through the air. All she saw was Max, and all she felt was the promise she'd made she'd save him, no matter what. Baby's sneakers pounded the grass as she raced back to the house, her heart hammering from the sight of Max trapped in the gate. His whimpers still rang in her ears, each one like a plea she couldn't ignore. She burst through the screen door, her voice shrill with panic. "Oh, Mom, you gotta help Max," she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. The kitchen smelled of chicken soup, but the warmth felt wrong when Max was suffering outside. Sarah stood by the counter, her phone pressed to her ear, her face tight with stress. Baby's little brother Timmy was coughing in his crib, and Sarah's eyes were red from worry. She held up a finger, mouthing wait, as she spoke into the phone. "Yes, I'll have the report done by morning," she said, her voice strained. Baby tugged at her sleeve, desperate. "Mom, please. Max is stuck, and he's hurting." Sarah hung up, kneeling to face her daughter. "Baby, I saw him. It's bad, but I'm trying to figure this out," she said, her voice soft but shaky. "Timmy's sick and work's piling up. I called the fire department, but they're stuck." At that fire downtown, Baby's heart sank. Max was out there, alone, his big brown eyes full of pain. How could a fire matter more than him? "But Max needs us now," Baby shouted, her small fists clenched. Sarah hugged her, but it didn't help. Baby felt like the world was closing in, trapping her just like that gate trapped Max. "I know, sweetheart," Sarah said, brushing a tear from Baby's cheek. "I'll try again, okay? Just stay calm." But Baby couldn't stay calm. Max was her best friend, the one who chased away her nightmares, who ran with her in the yard until they both collapsed, laughing. She couldn't just wait. She pulled away from her mom and slipped out the door, her heart racing. The night air was chilly, and Max's whimpers were fainter now, like he was running out of strength. Baby dropped to her knees beside him, the cold metal gate biting into her palms as she grabbed it. Max's fur was damp, his body trembling. His eyes met hers, and she saw fear, but also trust. He believed in her. "Right. I'm not leaving you, Max," she whispered, her voice fierce. "I'll get you out, I swear." She tugged at the gate, her small hands slipping on the rusty bars. "Ah!" It didn't budge, but she kept trying, grunting with effort.
"Actually,"
a sharp sound that made her stomach twist. "I'm sorry, boy. I'm trying," she said, her voice breaking. She sat back, panting, her hands red and sore. The street was still quiet, the neighbors' whispers from earlier gone. It was just her and Max now, and the weight of that felt too big for a 6-year-old Baby leaned close, pressing her forehead against Max's. His breath was warm, but it came in short gasps. "You're the bravest dog ever," she told him, her tears falling onto his fur. "You always protect me. Now it's my turn." She didn't know how, but she'd find a way. Maybe she could get a tool, or call someone else, or something. Anything. Max deserved that. Baby's forehead was still pressed against Max's, her tears mixing with his damp fur when she heard footsteps crunching on the gravel. She pulled back, wiping her eyes, and saw shadows moving closer. The neighbors were coming out, drawn by the news of Max's trouble. Their whispers floated through the chilly night air, like a crowd gathering for a show. Baby stayed by Max's side, her small hands stroking his side as his weak whimpers broke her heart. She'd promised to save him, but the gate hadn't budged. Her mom was still inside, stuck on the phone. Max's big brown eyes flickered, watching her, trusting her. His breathing was slow, each breath a struggle against the rusty bars pinching. His neck, Baby's chest ached. She couldn't let him down. "I'm right here, boy," she whispered, her voice shaky but firm. The crowd grew louder, their voices overlapping. Some sounded worried, others just curious. Baby glanced up, seeing familiar faces, Mrs. Clara from next door, the mailman, even kids from school. But no one stepped forward to help. "Poor dog," Mrs. Clara murmured, clutching her sweater. "That gate's old as dirt. It won't move easy." A man in a baseball cap nodded. "Needs a crowbar or something, but it's risky, could hurt him worse." Baby's stomach twisted. Hurt him worse? Max was already hurting. She wanted to scream at them to do something, but her throat felt tight. She looked at Max, his tail barely twitching, and felt a fire in her chest. She had to be brave for him. Then a gruff voice cut through the chatter. "All this fuss over a dog?" It was Mr. Jenkins, the old man who lived across the street. He stood at the edge of the crowd, his arms crossed, his face sour. "Just a dog, kid. Let it go." Baby's head snapped up, her eyes burning. Max wasn't just a dog. He was her best friend, her protector, the one who licked her tears when she fell off her bike. "He's not just a dog," she shouted, her voice cracking. "He's family." The crowd went quiet, surprised by her outburst. Mr. Jenkins scoffed, shaking his head. "Family, huh? Waste of time?" He turned to leave, but his words hit Baby like a slap. She hugged Max tighter, her face buried in his fur. "Don't listen to him, Max," she whispered. "You're worth everything." Max let out a soft whine like he understood, and his warmth gave her strength. She wouldn't let mean words stop her. Mrs. Clara stepped closer, her voice gentle. "Baby, honey, maybe we should wait for the firemen. Your mom said they're coming, right?" Baby shook her head, tears spilling. "They're too busy. Max can't wait." She tugged at the gate. Again, her hands sore and red, but it was like trying to move a mountain. The crowd murmured more advice: call a vet, use oil, cut the bars, but no one moved. They were scared, and Baby felt alone. Even with all those people around, she looked at Max, his eyes half closed now, his strength fading. Panic clawed at her heart. "Please, somebody help," she cried, her voice loud and desperate. A few neighbors shifted, looking at each other, but no one answered. Baby's hands shook as she stroked Max's fur, her mind racing. She couldn't do this alone, but she wouldn't give up. Max had never given up on her, not when she was scared of the dark, not when she got lost in the park. Now it was her turn. "Hold on, Max," she said, her voice steady despite the tears. "I'll find a way." She didn't know how, but she'd keep trying. The crowd's whispers faded as she focused on Max, his heartbeat under her hand. She didn't see Mrs. Clara slip away to call someone or hear the faint sirens in the distance. All she knew was Max and the promise she'd made. As the night grew colder, Baby stayed by his side, her small body a shield against the world. Determined to save her best friend, Baby's small body stayed curled against Max, her hand never leaving his fur as the night grew darker. The crowd's whispers had faded, most neighbors drifting back to their warm homes. Max's whimpers were softer now, almost too quiet, and that scared Baby more than anything. The rusty gate still held him tight, its sharp edges digging into his neck. She could feel his heart slowing under her fingers, each beat a reminder that time was running out. She'd yelled for help, but no one had stayed except her and Max, alone in the cold. The air was sharp, biting at Baby's cheeks, but she didn't care. Max was shivering, his big body weak from fighting the gate. She pulled off her pink jacket, draping it over his back. "You're gonna be okay, Max," she whispered, her voice trembling, looking at her with that same trust. But they were duller now, like he was slipping away. Baby's throat tightened. She couldn't lose him, not her Max. She stood, her legs wobbly, and ran back to the house. The screen door creaked as she burst inside, finding Sarah pacing with her phone. Timmy's coughs echoed from his crib, and Sarah's face was pale. "Mom, Max is worse," Baby cried, tugging at her arm. "He's so cold, and he's not moving much." Sarah's eyes widened, but her phone buzzed again. "Baby, I'm trying," she said, her voice cracking. "The fire department's still at that big fire. They said they'll come when they can? When they can?" Baby's voice broke. "Max needs them now." She stomped her foot, tears spilling. Sarah knelt, pulling her close. "I know, sweetheart. I'm calling everyone I can think of," she said. "But Timmy's fever's up, and I can't leave him." Baby pulled away, her heart pounding. She loved Timmy, but Max was out there hurting. She couldn't wait for grown-ups to figure it out. She ran back to Max, her sneakers slipping on. The damp grass. The street was empty now, the stars bright but cold above. She dropped beside him, her hands shaking as she touched his face. "I'm back, boy," she said softly. "I'm not leaving you." Max's tail gave a weak twitch, but his whines were barely audible. She noticed a dark spot on his neck blood, seeping from where the gate pressed too hard. Stomach lurched. No, 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 she whispered, pressing her sleeve against it to stop the bleeding. The gate felt like a monster holding Max prisoner. Baby tugged at it again, her hands raw from trying before. It didn't move, and Max yelped, a sharp sound. That made her stop. I'm sorry, Max. She sobbed, her tears falling onto his fur. She felt so small, so helpless. Max was always the strong one, chasing squirrels, barking at strangers to keep her safe. Now he needed her, and she didn't know what to do. She lay down beside him, her body pressed against his, trying to keep him warm. The ground was hard, the air heavy with the smell of rust and dirt. You're my best friend, she told him, her voice thick. You can't give up, okay? You just can't. Max's eyes met hers, and for a moment, she thought he nodded, like he was promising to fight. But his breathing was so weak, and the blood on her sleeve scared her. Baby's mind raced. Maybe she could find something to pry the gate open, like a stick or a rock. Maybe she could run to Mrs. Clara's house and beg for help. But leaving Max felt wrong, like betraying him. She hugged him tighter, her tears soaking his fur. Somebody please help us, she whispered, not sure who she was talking to. From the house, Sarah's voice called faintly, still on the phone. Yes, it's urgent. My daughter's dog is trapped. The words felt far away, like a dream. Baby looked at Max, his eyes half closed, and made another promise. I'll save you, Max. I don't know how, but I will. The night stretched on, cold and unforgiving, but Baby stayed by his side, her heart tied to his, refusing to let go. Baby clung to Max, her body pressed against his, her pink jacket barely keeping him warm in the biting night air. His whimpers were faint now, each one a stab to her heart. The blood on her sleeve from his neck made her stomach churn, and the rusty gate still held him like a trap. She'd promised to save him, but the world felt too big, too heavy for a 6-year-old. Sarah's voice drifted from the house, still, pleading on the phone, but no help had come. Baby's tears fell silently as she whispered to Max, "Just hold on, boy." A shadow moved in the dark, and heavy footsteps crunched toward her. Baby's head snapped up, her heart racing. A man stood there, tall and scruffy, his coat tattered and his face rough with stubble. She didn't know him, and that scared her. He knelt a few feet away, his eyes on Max. "That's a bad spot your dog's in, kid," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "Name's Tom. I was passing through when I heard the commotion." Baby hugged Max tighter, her voice small but sharp. "You gonna help him?" she asked, eyeing Tom warily. He frowned, looking at the gate's sharp edges. "I'd like to, but that gate's a beast. One wrong move, and it'll cut him deeper," he said. "You gotta be careful, or you'll make it worse." Hey. Baby's chest tightened. Worse. How? Could anything be worse than this? Max's eyes were half closed, his breathing shallow. She didn't trust this stranger, but he was the only one here. "Careful how?" she asked, her voice trembling. Tom pointed at the gate's jagged bars. "See those edges? They're digging into his neck." Pulling too hard, he stopped, like he didn't want to scare her more. But Baby's mind filled in the blank, and her tears spilled over. "Then what do I do?" she cried. "He's hurting." Tom's face softened just a little. "I'm not saying give up, kid. I'm just saying it needs the right tools. Maybe a crowbar, but you gotta know how to use it." Baby looked at Max, his fur matted with blood and sweat. She wanted to scream at Tom to do something, but his warning stuck in her head. She'd tried pulling the gate, and it only hurt Max more. Maybe he was right. "Do you have a crowbar?" she asked, her voice desperate. Tom shook his head. "Not on me, but I can look around. Stay with him. Keep him calm." He stood, glancing down the street like he was already searching. Baby nodded, her hand stroking Max's side. "Okay, Max, we'll be careful. She," whispered, "Tom's gonna help us." Max's tail gave a weak twitch like he heard her, and it gave her a spark of hope. Tom's words echoed make it worse. She couldn't mess this up. Max was counting on her. She looked up at Tom, who was still standing there, watching Max with a strange look, like he knew what it was to lose something. "You love that dog, don't you?" Tom said, his voice quieter now. Baby nodded, her throat too tight to speak. He's my best friend, she finally said, her voice breaking. He always protects me. Tom's eyes flickered like he understood. Then don't give up on him, he said. I'll be back. He turned and walked into the dark, his steps fading fast. Baby leaned close to Max, her cheek against his. His heartbeat was still there, faint but steady. Tom's gonna find something to help, she told him. You just keep fighting, okay? The night felt endless, the cold sinking into her bones. She could hear Sarah inside, still on. The phone, her voice frantic. Please, it's an emergency. Sarah said, but Baby didn't know if help was coming. All she knew was Max, his warmth, his trust. She glanced down the street where Tom had gone, her heart heavy. What if he didn't come back? What if no one did? Max's whine pulled her back, soft and weak. She pressed her hand against his neck, trying to stop the blood. I'm here, Max, she said, her voice fierce. Won't let you go. The night stretched on, but Baby held on, her promise to Max stronger than her fear. Even as a stranger's warning rang in her ears. Baby sat by Max, her hand pressed against his neck to stop the bleeding, her heart pounding as Tom's warning echoed in her mind. One wrong move, and it'll cut him deeper. Max's whimpers were so faint now, his big brown eyes barely open. The night was cold, the gate colder, and no help had come. Sarah's voice still drifted from the house, begging on the phone. But Baby couldn't wait anymore. Max needed her. And Tom's talk of tools gave her an idea. She kissed Max's nose, whispering, I'll be right back, boy. I've got a plan. She scrambled to her feet, her legs shaky from sitting on the hard ground. The yard was dark, only the faint glow of street lights showing the way. She ran to the garage, her sneakers slipping on the dewy grass. Inside, the air smelled of oil and dust. Her dad's old toolbox sat in the corner, a heavy metal box she'd seen him use to fix bikes and fences. If Tom needed a crowbar, maybe something in there could help Max. Her heart raced with hope, but also fear. She didn't know what she was looking for. She dragged the toolbox open, the lid creaking loud in the quiet. Tools clattered inside screwdrivers. Wrenches, a hammer. Her small hands fumbled through them, her fingers cold and clumsy. Come on, she muttered, searching for something strong enough to pry the gate. She found a long, heavy bar with a flat end, maybe a crowbar? Maybe not. It was heavier than she expected, but she gripped it tight, her arms straining as she dragged it back to Max. He was still there. His body slumped against the gate, his breathing shallow. Baby's stomach twisted at the sight. I got something. Max, she said, her voice bright despite the tears in her eyes. She knelt beside him, the tool cold in her hands. She wedged it into the gate's bars, pushing with all her strength. The metal groaned but didn't budge. Max whimpered, a sharp sound that made her freeze. I'm sorry, boy, she cried, dropping the tool. Her hands shook. She'd heard him again. The garage door slammed behind her, and Sarah's voice cut. Through the dark, Baby? What are you doing out here? Sarah ran over, her face pale with worry. She saw the tool and Max's weak form, and her eyes widened. Sweetheart, you can't use that. You'll hurt him worse, she said, grabbing the bar from Baby's hands. Baby's tears spilled over. But Mom, we have to do something. Dying, she shouted, her voice raw. Sarah knelt, pulling Baby into a hug. I know, Baby. I know, she said, her voice breaking. But this is dangerous. That gate's too strong, and you're too little. Baby pushed away, her fists clenched. I'm not too little. Max needs me. She pointed at him, his eyes flickering like he was listening. Sarah's face softened, but she shook her head. We have to wait for help, sweetheart. The fire department will come. Baby's heart sank. Wait, Max couldn't wait. She looked at him, his fur matted with blood, his body so still it scared her. You don't understand, she whispered, more to herself than Sarah. She sank beside Max, her hand on his side. His heartbeat was faint, but there. Not giving up, she told him, her voice fierce. I'll find another way. Sarah stood, clutching the phone. I'm calling the vet now, she said, stepping away. Baby barely heard her. Her eyes fell on the tool lying in the grass. Maybe she'd used it wrong. Maybe she needed to try again, gentler this time. She picked it up, her arms aching, and slid it into the gate's gap again. Please, Max, hold on, she whispered, pushing softly. The gate creaked, but Max yelped, and she stopped, her heart pounding. Tom was right. One wrong move could be too much. She dropped the tool, sobbing. I don't know how to do this, she said, her voice small. Max's nose nudged her hand, weak but warm, like he was telling her not to give up. Baby wiped her eyes, her mind racing. Maybe there was another tool or someone else who knew what to do. She looked down the dark street, hoping Tom would come back. The night felt endless, but Max's faint heartbeat kept her going. 8. Promised to save him, and she wouldn't stop trying, no matter how hard it was. Baby's hands trembled as she dropped the heavy tool, its clatter on the grass barely registering over Max's weak yelp. The gate still held him tight, its rusty bars unyielding, and her failed attempt to free him left her heart heavy. She sank beside her German shepherd, her best friend, his fur damp under her fingers. The night was colder now, the air sharp, and Max's breathing was so faint it scared her. She'd promised to save him, but every try seemed to hurt him more. Sarah's voice came from the house, still on the phone, but Baby felt alone. Her world shrinking to just her and Max. She pressed her hand against his neck, where blood seeped. From the gate's sharp edges, it was worse now, a dark stain spreading on his fur. Max, please stay with me, she whispered, her voice cracking. His big brown eyes opened just a sliver, looking at her with trust. But they were dull, like his strength was slipping away. His chest barely moved, each breath a struggle. Baby's tears fell onto his face, and she wiped them away, her hand shaking. You're so strong, boy, you can't give up. The yard was quiet, the neighbors gone except for Mrs. Clara, appeared from the dark, holding a bowl of water and some bread. Baby, honey, I brought this for Max, she said softly, kneeling beside them. Her kind eyes were wet with worry. Try to keep him strong, okay? Baby nodded, taking the bowl, but her heart sank. Max didn't move when she held the water. To his mouth, his tongue flicked weakly, then stopped. Come on, Max, drink, she pleaded, her voice small. Mrs. Clara touched her shoulder. He's fighting, baby. He knows you're here. Baby set the bowl down, her hand shaking so hard it spilled. He's not fighting enough, she said, her voice breaking. He's too tired. Mrs. Clara frowned, looking at the blood. On Max's neck. Oh, honey, that gate's cruel, she murmured. We need help soon, or... She trailed off, but Baby knew what she meant. The thought of losing Max made her chest hurt like she couldn't breathe. No, she shouted, hugging Max tight. He's not gonna die. He's not. Mrs. Clara's eyes softened. You're right, baby. He's got you. That's worth a lot. She stood, glancing toward the house. I'll check on your mom, see if the firemen are coming. She hurried off, leaving Baby alone with Max again. The silence was heavy, broken only by his faint whines. Baby's mind raced. She'd tried the tool, and it didn't work. Tom was gone, maybe not coming back. Sarah was stuck with Timmy and phone calls. Max needed her, but she felt so small. She leaned close, her cheek against his fur, his warmth fading. Remember when you chased that squirrel up the tree? She whispered, trying to keep him awake. You were so fast, Max. You're still that strong. You have to be. His tail didn't move, but his eyes flickered, like he was listening. Baby's tears soaked his fur. She couldn't lose him, not the dog who slept by her bed, who barked at thunder to make her feel safe. He was her hero, and heroes didn't give up. But the blood on his neck was spreading, and his breathing was so weak she could barely hear it. Panic clawed at her. Somebody please. She yelled into the dark, her voice echoing. No one answered. She pressed her hands harder against his neck, trying to stop the bleeding, but her fingers were slick with blood. Max, don't leave. Me, she sobbed, her voice loud and desperate. I need you." From the house, Sarah's voice grew louder, frantic. "Yes, it's my daughter's dog. He's bleeding." But the words felt far away, like they couldn't reach Max in time. Baby looked at him, his eyes half closed, and felt a fire in her chest. She wouldn't let him slip away. She didn't know how, but she'd keep trying. "You're my best friend," she told him, her voice fierce. "I'm gonna save you, Max. I promise." The night pressed in, cold and unforgiving, but Baby held on. Her heart tied to Max's fading strength, praying for a miracle. Baby's tears fell onto Max's fur. Her hands pressed against his bleeding neck as his faint breaths grew weaker. The night was a heavy blanket, wrapping them in cold and fear. Max's whimpers had nearly stopped, his big brown eyes barely open, and Baby's heart pounded with panic. She'd tried everything, yelling for help, using her dad's tool, but the gate wouldn't let him go. Sarah's voice still echoed from the house, pleading for help, but no one had come. Baby clung to her promise, whispering, "I won't let you go, Max," her voice raw with desperation. A crunch of gravel made her look up. Tom, the scruffy stranger, was back, his tattered coat swaying as he hurried toward her. In his hand was a rusty crowbar, glinting faintly under the streetlight. Baby's heart leaped, but fear followed fast. His warning about the gate's sharp edges still rang in her ears. One wrong move could hurt Max worse. "You came back," she said, her voice small but hopeful. Tom knelt beside her, his rough face serious as he studied Max. "Told you I'd try, kid," he said, his gravelly voice softer now. "This crowbar might do it, but we gotta be careful." He touched the gate, testing its grip. Max whined, a weak sound that made Baby's stomach twist. "Will it hurt him?" she asked, her eyes wide. Tom met her gaze, his expression honest. "It might, but doing nothing's worse. You ready to help me?" Baby nodded, her hand shaking as she stroked Max's fur. "I'm ready," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "Just save him, please." Tom gave her a small nod, like he respected her courage. He wedged the crowbar into the gate's bars, his muscles straining. "Hold him steady, kid," he said. "Keep him calm." Baby leaned close to Max, her cheek against his head. "It's okay, boy," she whispered. "Tom's gonna help us. Don't be scared." The gate groaned as Tom pushed, the metal creaking loud in the quiet night. Max flinched, his body tensing, and Baby's heart raced. "Easy, Max, easy," she soothed, her hands gentle on his fur. Tom grunted, his face red with effort. "This thing's stubborn," he muttered, "but it's moving." Baby's hope flared, but then Max let out a sharp yelp, and she saw fresh blood trickle from his neck. "Stop," she cried, her voice breaking. Tom froze, the crowbar still in place. "I'm hurting him," Baby sobbed, her hands shaking as she pressed them against Max's neck. Tom's eyes softened, but he didn't pull back. "We're close, kid," he said. "If we stop now, he might not make it. Trust me, okay?" Baby's tears fell, but she nodded. Max's eyes met hers, full of trust, despite the pain. She couldn't give up on him. "Okay?" she whispered. "Keep going." Tom pushed again, slower this time, his hands steady. The gate creaked louder, and Baby held her breath, her hands on Max, feeling his weak heartbeat. "You're so brave, Max," she told him, her voice thick. "You're my hero." The crowd was gone, the street silent, except for the gate's groans and Sarah's distant voice on the phone. "Yes, he's bleeding bad," Sarah shouted, her words sharp with panic. Baby focused on Max, her world narrowing to his faint breaths in Tom's effort. The crowbar slipped slightly, and Tom cursed under his breath. "Come on, you stupid gate," he muttered. Baby's heart pounded. She trusted Tom, but fear clawed at her. What if this didn't work? What if Max couldn't hold on? The thought away, stroking Max's fur. "We're almost there, boy," she said, her voice fierce. "You can do this." The gate shifted just a little, and Tom let out a grunt. "It's giving," he said, his voice tight with hope. Baby's eyes widened, but Max's whine was weaker now, his body slumping. Panic surged through her. "Hurry, Tom," she cried. He nodded, pushing harder, the muscles in his arms bulging. The gate groaned like it was fighting back, But Baby held Max tight, whispering, "Don't give up, Max, please." The night stretched on, cold and unforgiving, but Baby's hope burned bright, tied to Tom's crowbar and Max's fading strength.